Welcome to the BESE special call meeting for Tuesday, October 29th. Can I get a roll call, please?
Mr. Appel? Here. Dr. Armstrong? Here. Mr. Birkin? Here. Mr. Castile? Here. Ms. Champagne? Here. Dr. Clark? Not present. Mr. Harris? Here. Mr. Hollis? Not present. Ms. Holloway? Not present. Ms. Mellorine? Not present. Mr. Morris?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Could I get a motion? Next item, please.
Next item is 2.1, approval of the agenda.
Could I get a motion, please? Ms. Champagne, Mr. Castile, thank you. Any objections? Hearing none. Next item, please.
Next item is 3.1, consideration of LDOE contract regarding administration and management of an education savings account program.
All right, can I get a motion? Mr. Harris, Mr. Birkin, thank you. Superintendent?
Yes, sir. So this is the same contract essentially that you all approved at our last meeting, same value in terms of dollars as well as all of the other features. The only change is the dates. And the reason we had to shift the dates is because we were not on the JLCB agenda, which actually forced us to come back together and renegotiate the contract with new dates. So we're just asking again for the approval of this contract.
Thank you, sir. Do we have any comments from members? Senator Appel.
Just a question. Are we confident we're going to be on the next JLCB meeting so that we don't have to repeat this process again?
It is certainly our desire to be on that agenda.
Very diplomatic. Thank you.
Mr. Birkin.
Go ahead. I got to think.
He yields to Mr. Harris. Mr. Harris.
Oh, thank you. Just wanted to review a moment that what happens if we do not have a contract? What happens to our kids that are on the voucher system?
So Gator sunsets the scholarship program. So at the end of this academic year, those students would no longer be in a program because Gator is supposed to take the place of that. Any state that has universal ESA has a program administrator to do the program. There are 3 or 4 different groups that do that across the country. And we made the decision, along with legislators, the governor, et cetera, to go that route as well, as opposed to hiring additional agency staff, significant additional agency staff, because it's just more efficient to do it this way. And we have to begin taking applications in March. So as this has been delayed, it does make it more and more difficult with each passing day for us to successfully launch the program. And so it's really critical that a contract is approved so that we can move it forward, because those children, those 6,000 or so students, are in jeopardy because their program sunsets.
Right. So if we don't get this done, or the legislature doesn't, then that program dissolves itself because of the statute. And then we've got those children kind of in limbo, I guess, is what I'm...
Yes, sir. That would be a significant challenge to those kids and those families, for sure.
Well, I just wanted to ask that question to kind of reinforce the urgency of getting this done, because it doesn't just affect the new program. It affects kids that are already in a program that are going to be enveloped into this one. So thank you for your answer. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. And also, Mr. Harris, the department and BESE are charged with administration of this program. And frankly, we have done, and this board has done, everything that we're supposed to do, in fact, ahead of timelines. And so I just appreciate the board's leadership on that.
Superintendent, if you could remind us how many students we're talking about that could be potentially stranded?
It's give or take 6,000 students.
The money for this ESA, our hiring odyssey, has been appropriated, correct?
Yes, sir. So in the 25 budget, the 24-25 budget, There was a $1.8 million allocation to stand up the program, which could include that of the program administrator.
Will they have time to get the program up and going by March? Isn't it March when they're supposed to have it done?
Right, March 1. So it's not simply that we have to be taking applications by March 1st, but it's all of the establishing the providers, getting the platform together. It's not just the consumer side, you know, it's also the side of everyone who's going to be offering the programs, and offering the services. So all that has to be stood up, as well as the billing, all those various components. And so with every passing day, it gets more and more difficult to launch successfully. So time is essential at this point.
Am I correct in assuming that if a person through this program goes to a different school from a public, say, to a private, those MFP dollars would actually be following them, so the funding mechanism is mostly there?
So MFP dollars do not follow because
But they're not, the MFP is not being used
that's correct.
where they were.
They would not, that location, if they were in a public school, would no longer receive the MFP dollar state portion for that child. But this program, as well as the current scholarship program, are funded outside of the MFP with an appropriation. Yes, sir. Yeah, it has that effect. It's just really important to delineate that MFP aren't used for the program.
Mr. Halls.
Thank you. I'm going to direct this to the superintendent. This process has been, bounced around like a ping pong ball for quite some time. I know
We are the ping pong ball.
we are the right. And I know your crystal ball and mine as well is broken. But do you anticipate any further hurdles as this goes through the process? As it is now, I think you would say, yeah, if we pass this along this morning, as I anticipate that we will, it's not going to do anything to create a challenge for those that are really looking forward to this program.
Every state that has launched an ESA program has had hurdles and barriers and complications to overcome. And once we pass this program administrator vote today, hopefully, and this moves on, I certainly expect another challenge. I can assume what some of them might be, and some of them I don't know. But if we look at other states that have launched, there have been challenges the whole way in launching. But again, I feel like as an agency and as a board, we have done everything that we can do.
I understand.
That we've been called to do.
Are we at that threshold where we've already crossed into the danger zone? Are we okay?
We feel like we had a month essentially built in, and we used that month already. And so now it is really mission critical to get a contract approved so we can successfully launch by March.
Okay. And I had questions at our last meeting, but they were sufficiently answered to give me no reason for any further pause. As I appreciate it, the next step would be across the street at the Capitol, JLCB.
Yes, sir.
I presume that meeting is going to be on their November calendar agenda. Do you happen to know if that's accurate?
Yes, sir. We have reason to believe that that is the case.
Okay,
Yes,
great.
sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Champagne.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dr. Brumley, do we have any idea on why JLCB did not take it up at this time in the October?
I hate to speculate. I've heard various reasons, but I certainly hate to speculate. You can certainly, I would just advise if you wanted further details on that, certainly reach out to the leadership over there.
Sure, thank you. And I just want to, speaking of Mr. Hollis, I think every day that passes by without doing this, we're in a danger zone. Our children and our parents are in a danger zone. That is why, and I give lots of credit to our legislators for passing the ESA bill. It's a fairness bill. It's a fairness bill to all of our families that live in the state, as well as our kids. It's fair to the kids. And it's just a reminder, we have other former legislators on here that weren't served on education. In 2012, when we adopted Act 1, that was the beginning of school choice. So for people sometimes to say we don't have enough time, they've had 12 years. In 12 years, we have graduated 12 more classes of children throughout our state. So I think that's unfairness, and it needs to be funded. And I mean, I'm here to say, hey, look, I have some ideas on tax reform too. Some people may not like it to be able to fund the ESAs, because I've always told people, I think the state and the education system is causing a grave injustice to our parents and our children across the state. As a matter of fact, they kind of border double dipping on parents, because you have parents that are stuck in a zip code that are paying a lot of money to send their children to non-traditional public schools or private schools, and they're still using their hard-earned tax dollars to fund our public education system. So I would just like to urge our legislators, and I will do that, thank you, Dr. Brumley, I will reach out to all of them to share the importance of how I feel the importance of what they did and overwhelmingly did in the last legislative system session to pass these ESAs. It's a fairness to, in my opinion, I call it a fairness bill. Fair to our children more than anything, and their parents. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Castillo.
Picking up on the previous comments, I had a couple of constituents call on yesterday, and they are board members of a private school, and they were trying to figure out how to budget for next year. And that's the big challenge, and they were really struggling with what to do because of the unknown. And I think the biggest unknown is not knowing what the legislature is going to do with respect to an appropriation. And because notwithstanding what we're doing here, there's got to be funding for it. And we just won't know that until when? I mean, will we get some insight from the tech session, or more likely than not, it'll be the regular session?
No, I think that's right, and I think the first year of budgeting will be the most complicated year for non-publics because of the unknown. I think much like the present scholarship program, once it was in existence, it held steady, and people, and non-publics knew what to budget. But the unknown of the appropriation is what we're hearing as well. I mean, we're hearing it every day, and I think our team has done a really great job of making sure that we're pushing on this priority of expanding educational options for families, so I'm really thankful for that. I think your first sense of that would probably be in the executive budget, when the governor releases his executive budget at the turn of the year, because I think at that point, non-publics will have a sense of what the governor is asking for, and then they'll be able to begin probably some entry-level planning around those numbers.
Thank you. Any other comments?
But what is problematic, though, Mr. Castile, to Mr. Harris's point, is the fact that the current scholarship program sunsets. And so without the program administrator to oversee an ESA program at scale, those children are left without placement, as well as any future growth of the program.
Wow. I'm wondering how many of the schools understand that peril, that risk, because this particular school, most of the students would qualify for the program, and they were thinking about planning tuition, what is that going to look like? But they've got a bigger problem, and that is if there isn't funding, if those students, because of the sunsetting, you've got all of the students at risk now, not just those prospective students.
And I would assume Dr. Armstrong's hand is probably up right now, wanting to speak to this issue.
Yeah.
But she is probably hearing it from some of her colleagues.
Dr. Armstrong, is this an opportunity?
I mean, I fully support the program, so there's no question there. I think it's critical for our non-public schools that we continue with the ESA, we continue with this contract. I think one of the key points of the contract, though, is the marketing. And so I think that is something that we do need to start quickly, so that will help our non-public schools be able to market and let parents know what is available to them And so our current voucher students can automatically roll over, but any other student initially at that poverty level could also be afforded the opportunity for a non-public or a charter, non-public charter education as well. It gives parents the choice. And so I think we need to move forward on this.
Thank you. Any other comments, members? Mr. Harris?
Just one more comment about it. I don't think the JLCB not putting on the agenda, I don't think people were looking at the future, just even the short term. If this does not get through, I just want to reiterate that for my legislator friends, then when the executive budget comes out, they're not going to budget any money for the voucher system because it's sunset. Now, that's in the budget now. So if we don't have something in place for ESA, they will not have the capability to budget for an ESA program or a voucher program because the voucher program is going away at this end of this school year, in this fiscal year. So I think it's paramount that the legislature get this contract approved so we can start laying the foundation for this program so that it can be in the executive budget, and then they can debate that in the first appropriations meetings, you know. So it's just a sense of urgency I just didn't feel like was felt about us doing this because we leave the 6,000 students in limbo. There's no way we can budget anything if the apparatus is in place. I'm talking about the executive budget or the legislature. So the sunsetting of the voucher system, to me, is a big deal, and they need to be looking at that. So that's
And
my
Mr.
comment.
Harris, as soon as the program manager contract is approved at JLCB, I mean, our team we're teed up, we're ready to go. And so we are committed to a successful launch, but with every passing day of a program that's not approved, that is jeopardized.
Mr. Appel?
Thank you. I was just thinking about the statutory significance of all of this. I mean, we have an act that came from the legislature, signed by the governor, obviously, that defines certain date constraints on when this program is supposed to roll out. But by not putting it in JLCB and approving the contract, they are basically going against the very legislation that they passed. I'm talking collectively now, not individually. So my curiosity is, we have a special session coming. And I assume, I don't know the date of the JLCB meeting after that. But I assume it's going to be after the special session, because you have to implement whatever happened in the special session. So, you know, do we run the risk of not having funds come out of the special session for education, getting a serious whack, which would affect this program and others? I mean, do we have any thought what we're going to do if it's not funded, and yet we have a statute that says it must be funded?
Well, I mean, I have not heard from any legislator indicating a reduction of educational funding. I have not heard that from any particular legislature. Now, the way in which that happens, the structures, all those things would certainly be up for consideration during that session, and that's why I would encourage you with the committee you have legislatively to remain engaged. But I have not, just very candidly, heard from any legislator around any reduction in educational funding.
Well, as you know, when you get into a special session and a lot of general language as far as the call, anything can happen. And so we need to be engaged, obviously. I guess that's the gist of what I was saying. But beyond that, we need a plan B, because if it comes out of the special session and we don't get approval of JLCB, we have to have a strategy, because we have a mandate from the legislature through the act to do something. So I guess we're the ping pong ball you were talking about,
Yeah.
obviously. But I just think the folks that might be watching this need to understand why we're the ping pong ball. This was not a program from BESE. It was a program legislatively created. We don't fund it. The legislature funds it. And if it doesn't get funded, then somebody's in violation of law. It won't be BESE, because BESE's done everything we're supposed to do.
That's right, and that's why our team has tracked and brought to you all recommendations on policies and program administrators. Anything that need to be done from the BESE standpoint, you have done. Anything that needs to be happening on the back end from a programmatic side, we have done. And so there really isn't a box that we haven't checked.
Right.
And I agree with you. There needs to be a strategy should something happen. But for those who are watching in the education space, I'm also trying to relay a
optimistic.
message of
Yeah.
let's not fear educational cuts, because I haven't heard that from.
And I haven't either. I'm
Right.
just suggesting that there is a worst-case scenario that we need to be cognizant of. And I just wanted to make sure everybody in the other world understands that BESE and the Department of Education have done everything we were tasked to do. And should this fall apart for any reason, in the worst case, we'll do the best we can to pick up the pieces, but it's not our game. It's a legislative game. We're just the ping pong ball.
That's
Thank
very
you.
quotable.
Thank you.
Mr. Birkin.
The 6,000 or so you're talking about who are in the voucher program, are they automatically enrolled in the new system?
They are not automatically enrolled, but they are in phase one of eligibility, and on phase one of eligibility, they are priority one. So they are first preference of any other children in the state. And so part of this contract, although scaled back, is the marketing piece, which includes marketing to families, so that you're marketing to families, but also marketing and informing the non-publics that Mr. Castile spoke to, so that they know how to walk these families through an application process. And so there will be significant effort by non-public schools with support of our agency to help register these children that are in the current scholarship program for the new ESA model. They're not automatically enrolled, but they are phase one, priority one.
Ms. Champagne.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm glad Dr. Brumley brought up our new legislative committee. I would just urge, and I know our chair, Mr. Harris, is probably on top of this right now, but that I urge everyone, all of us, to be visible in those halls next week. Because remember, we will have every legislator here next week that we can reach out to. Because I can promise you, as in the past, the ones that don't want it funded will be represented quite heavily. So I do believe this should be our first task, is to make sure that we can get support on those ESAs. So I know our committee will be active in the next week or so, and you will see us out in those halls next week speaking to our legislators.
And Ms. Champagne, just to add to that, when this board took positions on instruments during the last session, this board took a position of support for ESAs. And that is aligned with the position of this board for some time of expanding educational options for families. And so it is something that's going to be important for this board to help usher across the finish line.
Yes, sir, we will. Thank you.
Dr.
So
Armstrong.
with that said, this board's first step is to approve this contract?
Well, this
asking.
board's first step was both the approval of the
Wait.
contract and the program rules. And so you have the rules in place, you had the contract in place.
We had it.
It just wasn't heard on time, so we have to adjust the dates. And so with approval of this contract today, you will be up to date on everything for which you're supposed to have done.
Ready to motion?
Any other thoughts? Okay, is there any public comment? No public comment. Is there any objection to the motion? Hearing none, motion passes. Next item, please.
That concludes your agenda.
Thank you. We're adjourned.